Let's kick a dead horse, yay! I'm mostly kidding here. This video really isn't about Fallout 76. It's about the industry as a whole, and I'll use Fallout 76 as a reference for a lot of things, but it's not the main focus at all. It's the most recent example fresh on everyone's mind, and it's absolutely still basking in the radioactive glow of its own failure, yes, but for anything good to come of this whole ordeal, we have to switch up our approach to the issue. There's this common argument I see fired back at YouTubers and creators or critics in general on pretty much any review that a viewer disagrees with. It's especially common in the gaming industry, though it does exist elsewhere. That argument is, if you don't like it, why don't you make your own? Or, you don't make video games, so you should shut up about them because you can't do it yourself. And varying degrees of that same argument, ranging from respectful to full-blown popped blood vessel fits of rage. The idea in its basic form makes sense for like a nanosecond, and then you realize, wait, no, that's total garbage. If you apply the same logic to more areas of life, the principle of if you can't do it yourself, you can't critique or commentate on it, it becomes an absolute joke. Following this train of thought, if you aren't a chef, then you can't critique meals. If you're not an architect or a construction worker, then you can't critique building layout. If you're not a politician, then you can't critique laws. The list goes on and on. What kind of f***ed up world would we live in if people actually believed that logic? When you go to a restaurant and eat a meal and get diarrhea because of that meal, you not being a chef does not make the diarrhea any less real or make the food taste any better just because you don't personally know how to cook all the different portions of it. In a buyer-seller relationship, the buyer, customer, consumer, whatever you want to call it, gamer in this case, knows what they like and what they don't like. Oftentimes, trends emerge because of common preferences, and large demographics form that prefer similar things. So when a game launches, like Fallout 76 or any number of other controversial titles, Fallout 76 is just the most recent of them, you can see a large unified coalition of dissatisfied customers. Believing that all those consumers have no right to be dissatisfied because each and every single one of them is not literally capable of programming a similar game themselves is one of the most idiotic positions I have ever had the misfortune of seeing. With that said, I won't even continue this thread because no one is that stupid. To believe that personal ability dictates what you are or are not allowed to critique, I won't even suggest that they themselves believe it. It's that brain dead. Now we can move on to how this relates to the gaming industry at large though, which is a much more important topic. A lot of people get uncomfortable when others get negative. And a lot of people were probably just now uncomfortable because I was so negative about the people that had voiced criticisms with that particular argument, but whatever. They get this little voice in the back of their mind that says,
"No, be nice. Don't be so mean. Stop it."
it's natural to feel that way. Some people feel that way after even the most harmless of criticisms, which is fine. Others don't start to feel that sense of hesitation till much later when the criticism has become more severe. But that little voice telling you, or me, or any of us to back off and not be so critical, that voice needs to be periodically silenced because it can have an irreversibly damaging effect on the entire industry. A great many of the most powerful gaming companies that exist follow a purely capitalist set of rules of engagement. They are profit-driven to their very core, and while we do reap a positive benefit from various video games that they produce, they aren't making those games because they fundamentally wish to provide players with limitless enjoyment or make their lives better. I am, of course, speaking on a corporate level. When you scale down your lens, however, and examine the individuals, quite the inverse is often true. More of the core developers possess a true passion for their work than those that don't, and it's important to make that distinction. On a higher corporate level, there are always exceptions to this type of generalization as well. There exist companies that have proven time and time again they are capable of creating well-crafted, beautiful, functional, and spectacular video games. There is CD Projekt Red with Witcher 3, and it's quite possible they will yet again blow us away with Cyberpunk 2077, for which it is clear they are taking every bit of time needed to do just that, rather than rush out something unfinished. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2, God of War, Spider-Man, Breath of the Wild, and so many more stand out as stone-cold examples of an ideal, or at least nearly ideal, industry format. But pitted against those games and those companies are the Legion of Doom, if you will. It's a little bit dark and alarmist to say that, but whatever. A group of publishers in a race to the bottom to see how little they can do while still raking in profits. The invasion of microtransactions is something the next generation of gamers will simply just have to live with. They won't remember why or how, but most every game they play will be riddled with them, whereas a decade ago, they practically did not even exist. Conceptually, microtransactions don't have to be the worst thing ever, but day in and day out, these companies innovate new ways to push them on us harder. The inception of on-disc DLC is yet another concept that came about during my own lifespan as a gamer. What was once simple paid DLC became on-disc DLC, chopped out of the original game. There were season passes, and the spiral continues down and down. Gamers did draw sort of a line with loot boxes. They were even declared gambling in multiple countries, and that single facet of the creeping greed was momentarily delayed, even pushed back slightly, but anyone believing it will not come back around is honestly deluding themselves. These companies, the group ever so intent on pushing the monetization boundaries time and time again, are simply waiting for us to forget, forgive, and move on before taking another crack at the very same things that outrage their entire communities in the first place. This would not be nearly as much of a problem, however, if the entire corrupt group did not shift in unison. When one of these companies takes a small step forward and inserts a highly profitable monetization mechanism, for instance, or gets away with a chopped up resold travesty, the others look to that as an example, and they all begin to take that very same step. As each of the different parties takes their steps, the whole group moves, and with a multitude of different, highly intelligent, and frankly malicious entities involved, each taking their own steps that the horde follows, the trend itself overall progresses extremely quickly. To bring it back around, the little voice in the back of your head, or my head, that cries out in discomfort when creators bash on a product that you like, or hell, even a product that you don't like, but they bash on it a lot, that is healthy. It's a good thing. It's necessary, and sometimes we need to steel ourselves to the cold reality that without community outrage, without pushback, even pushback that feels like overkill, we would have to resign ourselves to a negative trend that would in turn move even faster. Since we have seen over and over again that gaming companies are entirely capable of making a beautiful, functional, and well-crafted product, which in turn sells extremely well and makes a great many people rich, with profits to go around and then some, why would we ever accept the deteriorating quality of many other competing franchises in the industry? The little voice that tells us to be more reasonable or not be as severe is largely to blame for this. What may seem like beating a dead horse to some, specifically in regards to Fallout 76, is actually just the culmination of frustration built up over many months or even years. In one sense, the outrage directed at Fallout 76 is indeed partially misplaced. A lot of gamers or creators never lashed out at things like Battlefront 2 or Metal Gear Survive. They tempered themselves, and with this particular case, it finally boiled over, resulting in criticism born of frustration, with a variety of industry sources being specifically fired off at Bethesda and Fallout 76. But that can even be, in a very abstract way, a compliment, because the community had high expectations from a giant such as Bethesda. I can understand the sentiment that some have towards myself and all other creators who covered Fallout 76. To be even more broad, the feeling that negative creators on YouTube need to say less and have more positivity. But to those people, I say this: positivity and forgiveness in cutthroat capitalism on a corporate level are almost synonymous with weakness. There are exceptions, but the little voice in your mind saying to be nicer and give them another chance is the backdoor flaw that a lot of gaming companies are continuing to exploit in order to create worse products for more money with less effort and no accountability. To be very clear, I am not saying that anyone should adopt a forced negative perspective. When something is good, talk about it, pump it up, acknowledge its success, and praise those responsible for the innovation and creation of that product. But on the flip side, when something is bad, especially something like Fallout 76 that obviously flipped assets, lied in its marketing — if you don't believe me, just harken back to the statement that this was a larger undertaking than Skyrim — and it launched a faulty, unfinished, undeserving cash grab, rip into it. Hit it hard, hit it fast, keep hitting it, because as soon as we stop pushing back and gaining ground ourselves against certain negative industry trends, they reclaim that ground and they keep coming. I'm not saying perpetually make videos about specifically Fallout 76. That would not make sense at all. But what I am saying is that we should all keep a watchful eye and be ready to voice opinion when one of those small or sometimes even larger steps get taken by those corporations that have those negative interests. I've been down the road of fake positivity before. A lot of gamers prefer to see that and only that, but it's just not who I am. And it's decidedly unhealthy to the industry at large. The idea of putting a positive spin on everything when some companies are specifically trying to maliciously take advantage of consumer habits and their attention span, while only backing off long enough to let us forget about it, soothed into cooperation by the little uncomfortable voice in our mind that says, don't be so mean to them, before they come back harder and faster than before, that is a concept I will never approve of or perpetuate. To wrap it all up, this all paints a very dire and alarmist picture of the industry, and that's kind of good. I meant to do that, sort of. I was talking about companies like EA or Konami, and now possibly Bethesda as well. Sometimes even the most vile gaming developers, though, and publishers make something great, so keep a watchful eye on the industry as a whole if that's your passion. Don't write off a game purely for the one simple reason that a company with often undesirable practices is merely associated, but also keep in mind that if the company does take a step down the wrong road and backlash builds, that backlash is a necessary and beneficial phenomenon. Fighting against those who voice criticism could quite possibly be the same exact thing as fighting against the advocates for your own interests, just because of that uncomfortable little voice all in the back of your mind. That's going to be it for today. If you want to support, check out the links down below. Drop any feedback in the comment section. And as always, thank you for watching and have a nice night.